Alice in Borderlands' third season was the craziest so far. So let's break down the entire story, piece by piece. A few years after the meteorite crashed into Shibuya and dragged Arisu and his crew into Borderlands' twisted death games, life seemed to be moving forward, approaching a sense of normalcy. Tokyo wore its scars but kept rebuilding, and Arisu finally got together with Usagi. They were trying to build something normal but beautiful, sharing quiet moments and actually talking about having a future together. For a while, it looked like they'd earned some peace. But trauma doesn't just disappear because you want it to. Usagi couldn't shake the memory of her father's death. The image haunted her constantly, creeping into her dreams and pulling her toward dark places. This emotional vulnerability made her an easy target when someone from the past decided to drag her back into the nightmare. Dr. Ryuji showed up as this professor who was completely obsessed with near-death experiences. He'd been investigating all the weird stuff that Shibuya survivors kept describing, convinced that the Borderland wasn't some fantasy, but actually a shared consciousness state that people entered when their hearts stopped. The guy attended these dodgy seminars that were popping up everywhere after the disaster. At one of these meetings, participants got invited into what looked like a harmless card game called Old Maid, with the Joker card right in the center. But it turns out the game was anything but harmless. Lose a round and you got executed immediately. Each round meant fewer players left standing. Ryuji stayed calm and calculated his way to the end, watching his final opponent hesitate and pick the wrong card. When Ryuji claimed victory, he got offered the chance to enter the Borderland itself. He took it without thinking twice and quickly got tangled up with Banda, one of the most twisted citizens in that world. Banda had been sitting around waiting for fresh meat to entertain him, and he had his sights set directly on Border Boy and the mountain climber. Meanwhile, Arisu's world started falling apart. Usagi disappeared, lured away by memories of her father and the schemes of people who wanted her back in the Borderland. Arisu only had one thought: save her, no matter what. He tracked down Mommy Ann, the doctor whose medical knowledge had kept people alive during the earlier games. She explained this brutal method involving a drug that would stop his heart, putting him in cardiac arrest for just a minute or two. Those few seconds would stretch into days inside the Borderland, giving him a chance to find his girl and bring her back. The plan was completely insane, but Border Boy didn't hesitate. Ann gave him the injection, his heart slowed down, and the nightmare started all over again. The Borderland welcomed him back with the familiar eerie silence, then threw him right into a new game. The rules seemed straightforward at first: draw fortunes and answer riddles. But every wrong answer triggered volleys of flaming arrows that rained down on everyone. Players started burning alive while panic spread, but the game kept its cruel rhythm going. Round after round, the puzzles got harder and the arrows fell thicker, until Arisu figured out the hidden pattern. The fortunes weren't random at all. They pointed toward the direction of danger and safety. He guided the survivors toward a hidden underground refuge, saving whoever could reach it in time. Plenty of people died, but a core group made it through and cleared the game. Arisu already felt that familiar weight of responsibility crushing down on him, knowing that every mistake cost lives. Still, he pushed forward because somewhere in this world, Usagi was fighting too and needed his help. The second game brought new players who got cards marking their roles: human, zombie, cure, or shotgun. The rules meant zombies had to infect others through touch, while humans tried to resist, and the balance kept shifting every round. If infection spread too far, zombies won. If humans lasted long enough, they came out on top. The losers, of course, would meet their end. The whole thing was basically a cruel mirror of real survival, like a war built on trust and betrayal. A newcomer named Ray suggested a solidarity strategy, promising her group that vaccines would save any member who got turned into a zombie. For a while, it actually worked. Alliances formed, and there was hope that most people would make it to the end. Here's where things got twisted, though. Ray found out that Border Boy himself had been holding a zombie card from the very beginning. His real plan was to spread infection on purpose, making sure the largest number of people survived by winning as zombies instead of humans. The revelation shook everyone who was left, but the logic made perfect sense. To save the many, the few had to fall. Arisu survived in the end, though many people who focused on destroying zombies died instead. The whole thing showed how much he'd evolved from his first time there. Once he used to hesitate about everything, but now he made cold, calculated choices if it meant protecting the people who mattered. Somewhere else, his baby girl, the mountain climber, was stuck in her own nightmare. She teamed up with Ryuji, who'd lost a student during his experiments with near-death consciousness. They got trapped on a poisoned train where carriages filled with deadly gas, masks, and antidotes were scarce, and every wrong move meant suffocation. Fear turned into chaos as the group argued and split apart. But Usagi and Ryuji found a fragile connection with each other. They calculated a desperate escape plan that involved leaping between trains as they crossed on parallel tracks. Some people fell and died, others barely clung to life. For just a moment, in this tiny window between carriages, Usagi caught a glimpse of Arisu in another train. They saw each other across the void, separated but united by pure determination. That vision drove both of them to survive and reach the end, no matter what it took. The price was brutal, though. A fellow researcher who'd volunteered to test Ryuji's theories ended up dying during the trial, and her death completely haunted him. Guilt started eating away at him, and Banda manipulated that weakness perfectly. He whispered that if Ryuji really wanted answers, if he was serious about understanding death, he needed to kill Usagi during the games. Ryuji fought against it, torn between his ambition and his conscience, but the seed of doubt got planted deep. The third stage split the survivors into two groups. One had to climb a tower, pressing buttons in a super deadly version of bingo, while objects crashed down on them. The other group had to collect volatile explosive cans and place them before they detonated. Both challenges were absolutely merciless. Every mistake meant someone died. Every victory felt like stealing from the dead. But through pure resilience, Border Boy and Mountain Girl managed to survive once more. Their bond got tested hard but grew stronger, and soon they were finally reunited in Borderland. For a brief moment, hope felt possible again. Together, they held on to the belief that they could find a way out. If you thought things were intense already, buckle up because the games weren't finished yet. The next trial was the most surreal thing yet. Future Sugaroku, a death match stretched across a grid of connected rooms. 10 players were required, but only 9 stood there at the start. Also, of everyone watching, only 1% is subscribed. So you guys better get it to at least 5%, otherwise, I don't know. Just please subscribe, thank you. Then came the big revelation. Usagi was pregnant. Her unborn child counted as the 10th participant, tying not just her fate, but her baby's life to whatever happened next. Each player wore a collar and got a limited number of points. Every move through the grid cost points. Every door they opened revealed visions of possible futures. Some showed warmth and family, others showed loneliness, despair, or death. Making choices became excruciating because moving forward meant throwing away dreams or condemning your allies. Dice rolls decided how many people could advance, and with each step the group broke apart more. Arisu struggled to keep everyone together, calculating and strategizing, but the game's design was completely merciless. One by one, players ran out of points. It exposed their deepest hopes and fears, forcing them to face what kind of future they actually wanted if they got their lives back. The dice at the end said that only 7 could pass through to the exit. Mountain Climber's pregnancy changed everything. For the rest to live, someone had to stay behind, or her and her child would pay the price. Arisu made the difficult choice himself. He gave up his chance at freedom, promising that Usagi and their child would survive. He trusted Ryuji with protecting her, a promise that weighed heavily on this man who was already torn between guilt and loyalty. The survivors walked through the exit, and Border Boy got left behind. But the Borderland had one final cruel revelation waiting. Outside, the world was collapsing under this massive flood. Buildings crumbled, torrents swept survivors away. Usagi got caught in the current, her life slipping away from Arisu's protection. He dove in after her, refusing to give up hope. Just when he was about to be wiped out by Banda, time stopped completely after he was lasered from above, and the man in black showed up. The figure Arisu faced wore all black, this presence that was both terrifying and weirdly calm. Arisu asked if he was the Joker, but he explained that the Joker wasn't a ruler or even a person. It was just a card, a placeholder in the great deck of existence, representing uncertainty and the gaps between life and death. He offered Arisu a choice. Draw one card, and if it turned out to be the Joker, the future would get decided for him. Draw any other card, and the future was his to claim. Border Boy reached for a card, and in this cruel twist, both cards were Jokers. The deck itself was mocking the whole idea of certainty. Still, the man in black gave him an option. Surrender to the waters, and accept death where pain and suffering didn't exist anymore, or fight for life where happiness was fleeting but real. The man tempted him with promises of peace, pointing out how pointless life was when it was filled with grief and loss. But Arisu had changed completely. Once he'd been broken and hollow, now he carried love, responsibility, and a vision of the future. He spoke with certainty, saying that life with all its agony was worth enduring because it also held joy. The birth of a child, the chance to love and protect someone, to feel the raw chaos of existence. These things gave meaning that death could never offer. The man in black had existed as gatekeeper of this purgatory for countless years, and Arisu's answer took him completely off guard. For all his cynicism, he still clung to existence himself while urging others to give it up. Border Boy exposed the contradiction, and by choosing life, he made a decision that few people dared to make when confronted by despair. But Usagi was still there. In the frozen torrent, her body drifted beyond reach. Arisu dove after her anyway, breaking the illusion that anything was inevitable. In that choice, he refused both death and surrender, carving out a third path that was pure defiance. His determination rippled through even the man in black, who granted him the chance to return. With incredible effort, Arisu pulled Usagi from the waters, saving her not just in the Borderland, but in life itself. When the vision broke, Border Boy woke up in the hospital with his heart pounding like he'd been gone for years, even though only minutes had passed. Mountain Girl lay beside him, unconscious, but alive. Slowly, she opened her eyes, and the two reunited in a tearful embrace. Against all odds, they'd returned together. Ryuji wasn't so lucky, though. His body had failed, his life ending in the aftermath of his choices in the Borderland. He got a tragic end so they could live, leaving Arisu and Usagi to mourn a man who'd been both enemy and ally, victim and betrayer, but who in the end chose to protect rather than destroy. Life started up again, though the scars stayed put. Tokyo was still a city rebuilding itself, and the Borderland survivors struggled to figure out what their existence meant now. Arisu began working as a counselor, guiding other people who'd survived the nightmare, asking them the questions that used to consume him. What does life mean to you? What reasons do you have to keep living? In those sessions, familiar faces returned. Aguni, Kuina, Naragi, Chishiya all shared their own reflections. Each had seen the abyss. Each carried new perspectives on survival. Their presence reminded Border Boy that even in tragedy, bonds lasted, and memories of the Borderland couldn't be completely erased. For Arisu and Usagi, hope took the shape of new life. They prepared for their child's birth, a daughter. They talked about names, imagining a future free from the cruelty of the games. Finally, it seemed like peace had returned. But cracks started appearing in the surface of this fragile reality. News reports warned about earthquakes hitting across the globe, tectonic shifts more violent than ever before. A tremor rattled their own home, like the earth itself was restless. The man in black's words echoed back, his warning that the Borderlands wouldn't stay empty. Disasters in the human world meant souls would flood into purgatory again. The season closed with a haunting scene. Far away in California, two men walked into a diner, chatting casually, completely unaware of the chaos looming overhead. Their waitress approached, her name tag catching the camera. It read simply, Alice. In that moment, the story expanded beyond Japan, suggesting that the games might not be bound to Tokyo alone. A new cycle, maybe larger and more devastating, was waiting to begin. The journey of Season 3 leaves us with both closure and a huge sense of unease. Arisu and his wifey finally broke free, no longer prisoners of despair. Their love, their unborn child, and their resilience carried them into a new chapter. But the world they returned to trembled on the edge of collapse, hinting that the Borderland wasn't finished with its torture, but instead just paused, waiting for its next victims. The man in black's lesson lingered. Life itself was uncertain, full of chaos and chance, and only those who chose to face it could find meaning. Season 3 tells a story of survival, sacrifice, and rebirth. It explores the thin line between life and death, the lure of surrender for a false promise of peace, and the courage required to keep going despite pain. It brings back the psychological intensity of the games while pushing its characters to their most profound choices yet. And in the end, it reminds us that existence is fragile, unpredictable, and worth every moment. So this has been the entire story of Alice in Borderlands Season 3. What did you think about this season? Did it live up to the hype or leave you disappointed? Are you hyped for Season 4? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more Alice content and theories, click the video on screen now.